Well, how we doing tonight here? And welcome to Noel's World of Whiskey. And different glasses tonight. Knob Creek. Creek that ran behind Abraham Lincoln's childhood home. Anyways, Knob Creek is it's a Jim Beam whiskey. That is where it is distilled. Suntory, of course, is the mother company, Suntory Beam, and of course we know they have bakers, and Jim Beam makes a couple of ryes. I'm not sure if Basil Hayden is making a rye, but I'll have to check that one out. These are all, of course, Jim Beam companies. Now, they make a regular rye. And then this is their double barreled rye. Now the other Knob Creek whiskeys are all age statements. These were basically supposedly to be small batch formulas for the high-end market. That's why they created this. And it was Booker Noe back in 1992. He started this brand here. He was the sixth generation master distiller for Jim Beam. And now I think his son has taken over, Fred Booker Noe. And anyways, what I can say is that this is a non-age statement. The rye is the only one that is non-age statement. But what's interesting is that their regular rye, it's a spicy rye. It is sweet, but it's a spicy rye. Now this one here is, they're doing something that it's almost unheard of with rye whiskey, and that's double barreled and finishing it in a number 4 alligator char. So interesting stuff. So just, some tidbits of information here. Lot 40 is also double barreled and finished in number 4 charred barrels. It took me a while for that to register. So when I said there was no other American version of this, we've got a Canadian version, but the difference is that Lot 40 is 100% rye. Check my review out on Lot 40. It's an impressive whiskey. That's the dark oak. Now there's the 2 Lot 40s. They're both award-winning and excellent rye, and not knocking this, still a decent rye, but they're worth checking out. So we're going to do a review on this, and we'll get right into it. Interesting thing, you think of anything double barreled, especially doing a alligator number 4 char. It's mostly bourbon. There's some toasted double barrel ryes, but you think of Woodford Reserve's double barrel, but it's a bourbon. And I'm trying to think of any other American rye that is double barreled. But anyways, the regular Knob Creek rye is known to be a spicy rye. So this will be interesting doing a review on this, what the double barrel, especially with the number 4 alligator char, what it does to the whiskey, because we kind of know what it does to other whiskeys, so it'll be interesting here. We'll start off, of course, with the nose. And remember, Knob Creek was for the high-end market. It was originally to be done in small batches, kind of targeting and competing with maybe a lot of the craft distilleries and that. So, boy, right off the bat, I'm getting bourbon. Is what I'm getting. I'm having a hard time. I just did a Lot 40 Canadian rye, Lot 40, one of Dr. Livermore's whiskeys, and boy, this is different. Yeah, so very much bourbon. Now this is 51% rye. I'm gonna have to get the mash bill for this, but I'm I know it's 51% rye. Sweet. It's what do they call Jim? They always talk about Jim Beam peanut funk, you know. Because it is kind of a Jim Beam, is what we've got here, Jim Beam rye, but it's been double barreled in that number 4 char. So lots of caramel, lots of vanilla. You know, yeah, vanilla cupcakes. I am getting a bit of the apples that I get in the Lock 40 and some of the Pike Creek Canadian whiskeys there. I'm getting some of that. Certainly a lot of sweetness here. Getting even, I'm going to say fudge. Mixture of fudge. You know, I'm going to say maybe even apple crisp. Apple crumble. Wow, quite the nose. Different than most ryes that I know. Is it definitely different. You remember I'm Canadian and I drink a lot of Canadian whiskey, but it's got a more of a bourbon nose. But again, it's 51% rye. And you got to remember there are ryes in Canada that are, they don't have any rye in them at all, but I don't call them rye. So they might call themselves rye, but that's our law, you know. We allow, I mean, this has to be a minimum 51% to be called rye in the States. So, but we relate rye to Canadian whiskeys. So I guess we figured that's where it all started. And during the Prohibition, there was a lot of some of the biggest, well, the biggest companies in the world were in Canada, the biggest distilleries. So, anyways, and that's what they were doing. They were doing rye whiskey and corn whiskeys and whatever. But let's give this the palate. Very sweet. A little bit of spice coming through now. A little bit of a Kentucky burn. You'll get a little bit of the oak. And again, a little bit of the slight bit of tobacco notes at the tail end there. But a lot of sweetness up front. Got a little bit of cinnamon coming through. Yeah, the cinnamon and mixed with a little bit of the tobacco notes there. Maybe a little bit of that dark chocolate even coming through right now. Don't usually get the dark chocolate, or don't get any chocolate usually in the ryes. You know, I'm talking the real rye whiskeys, not the corn whiskeys, but I am getting a little bit there. So I'm going to say that the rye is showing up here more with the spice, the cinnamon and the tobacco notes and that, but lots of sweetness to this. You know, I'm going to top this baby up here a little bit. Pepper. These are not real super hot spices. I mean, there's a little bit of heat, but not much. This is incredibly mellow as compared to maybe if we were drinking the regular Knob Creek rye. It's really mellowed out here. That number 4 char barrels really brought a lot of the sweetness to this drink. But yeah, definitely got some cocoa chocolate notes here. Wow. Let's go for the finish here. I'm getting a little bit of that. I am getting a little bit of the rye now toward the finish. I think I was just getting another mouthful in there, and the rye is coming through. It's funny. when we're looking at, like in Canada, we get away with so much calling things rye that are basically not rye, but they're corn whiskey. But in the States, this is probably called barely legal rye at 51%. But I mean, this is a nice drink. It's certainly a rye you could present to somebody that was not a rye drinker, and they probably would find it palatable. So, but it's not a heavy hitting rye by any means. Not as heavy hitting as the regular Knob Creek rye. So, and I'm not sure of the age of this. Everything is pretty much 9 years minimum with Knob Creek, so they're not giving me an age statement. I'm gonna have to do some more research on this, but they do say age, but they don't tell you how much. And every bourbon they make is a minimum of 9 years, and they've got some 12s, and they even got an 18 now. But I'm going to say this is not a long finish. That's what's unusual about it. I thought it would be a little longer finish, but it's kind of more on the short side of medium. Definitely on the short side. But I am getting right to the end here. I am getting the apple pie and cinnamon apple pie, apple crumble, apple crisp, and boy, that caramel. Yeah, maybe even a little bit of mint there. That's another little thing that I was kind of thinking of what that was earlier. It's mint. I'm getting the mint. I was coming in when I first got the spices on the palate there, but yeah. Let's see what the water does to it here. Let's give it a touch of water. And I mean, this is a pleasant drink. The word pleasant. It is definitely something I could serve to somebody that is not necessarily a rye drinker. Now, I drank a lot of rye when I was younger, and I sort of got into more Scotch and other whiskeys, and I kind of have gotten back into it. It was Lot 40 kind of turned me back onto rye. I've drank different bourbons through the years, and another drop or two here, so there we are. I remember making a trip down the States quite a few years back there where, I was introduced to so many bourbons, and I didn't know a lot about bourbons, and it was confusing. I had an American buddy, and we spent a few months in the States there, and down in Mexico, of course, and man, did I get an education on bourbon, but every once in a while he'd say corn whiskey, and just a higher percentage of corn, or maybe it was above I'm trying to think of what the percentage is, that it has to be a minimum. There's minimum and maximum, but maybe it's when it's above a certain percentage they call it corn whiskey. But I didn't like I wasn't crazy about their corn whiskeys because they're probably really low end whiskeys. I'm certain there's better corn whiskeys out there, but the bourbons I had, it was relative to what we paid. There's no question about that. And I remember the Jack Daniels in the end, not knowing and remembering those whiskeys. I remember Jack Daniels had a couple I liked, but certainly what I learned about the bourbons was that they were a lot different than the ryes I was drinking. And, they were not as spicy as the rye we have up here. And I'm talking Canadian Club and some of the more pure ryes that don't have a lot of corn in them. But anyways, let's see what water does to this here. Oh God, we're getting gingerbread cookies here. So we got the baked apples, we got the apple pie, we got gingerbread cookies, mint still there. Maybe even, here's a good one. Maybe how about some caramel apple Jolly Rogers? Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Your rye, the rye spices have all but disappeared here. I'm talking the hot spices. Okay, the palate. Sweeter. I actually, I like this. This would be a great drink in the summer. I read a lot of the reviews on this. I usually do before I do a review. Some of them were critical it was too sweet. Some said, what happened to the rye? There's all sorts of comments. But then again, I had some really good comments on this is a rye that is very presentable for those that are being introduced to rye. And I would agree. Incredibly mellow. It's like a bourbon. It's a bourbon with a little more rye in it. That's what it is. The single barrel, which I've drank before, that's what got me onto this one here. It's a lot spicier. I actually prefer this because if I'm going to go to the single barrel Knob Creek, I'll go to a Canadian whiskey like a Lot 40 or a Pike Creek. Those are incredibly good whiskeys. I just think they're superior at what Dr. Livermore has done. Now, I'm not criticizing Fred. No, I think he's doing a great job. I like what he's done here, So, anyways, there's a lot of sweetness here. The water opens it up. Anybody that, likes just a good mellow drink. Now, this is a 50, what is this here? It's a 50%. So, I added just a few drops of water and it really opened up, but a 50%, with the double barreling, the number 4 char, the alligator char, it is definitely not the same rye as the single barrel. So anybody that's drank the single barrel, don't expect the same here. It's a lot sweeter. It takes a lot of the snap or the hot spice out of the rye. Incredibly smooth drink. There's going to be people that are going to really like this drink. So. And I'm certainly not having any problem with it. How am I going to score this? I would probably score this for what it is. When they designed this drink, I know what they're doing. I mean, there's nobody that has got a double-barreled rye in the States. It's like number 4 char double-barreled. I don't know. Well, maybe there is. I'm going to have to research that one, but I'm not aware of it. But they know what they're doing. There's a market for this. Here's a rye whiskey that, a lot of people are not crazy. There's a lot of people not crazy about rye. They find it too spicy, too hot. Here's a rye whiskey that I think they're going to like. Now, I myself personally, I got sort of my palate changed, and some of the earlier Canadian ryes, and they were potent ryes. They were strong, and even at 40, 43, they were strong ryes. A lot of very spicy ryes. The more recent ryes, I mean, things like Crown, where you've got lots of corn in that, they're more like this, and they're very popular. So there's some good spice in a Crown, and there's so many different types of Crown. But Pike Creek, there's a go-to rye, but I'm not going to compare this to Pike Creek. This has got its own place. So I'm going to say that this here is a 79. I'm going to make it an 80. I'm going to make this an 80. Now, I score different, probably a lot of Americans do, because I'm basing this on the scoring that I would do relative to the price and relative to what I get out of the whiskey itself. And I'm going to leave it at 79. No, I'm going to leave it at 79 because I just had a flash of a couple of whiskeys I just recently scored. I'll leave it at a 79. I think it's a good whiskey. I think that it is a whiskey that in the marketplace you would certainly respect what they're trying to do here. I don't know how much we identify it as a true rye whiskey. What do they call it? Barely legally rye, because it's more like a bourbon, but it's a good bourbon. So let's leave it at a 79. That's a respectable score. It's a decent whiskey. Hey, I've got it. I would not buy the single barrel. I've had it in different places. I wouldn't buy it. It's not my, there's better rye up here in Canada, but I would definitely recommend this because it is different. It's not quite a bourbon. It's not quite a rye. It belongs in my wheelhouse. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I'm giving it a 79. And I'm going to ask you to drink wisely, drink intelligently, do not drink and drive. Until the next time, cheers.